And we're live. Happy New Year, Michael.
Happy New Year, Marco. What is a New Year's resolution that you have?
A New Year's resolution. To pace myself.
Hmm.
I think I've been going very strong into 2026, and the pace has not been something I would call sustainable. So finding a more sustainable pace for my life right now is my New Year's resolution. How about you?
To become one of the greats.
You are one of the greats, Michael.
I want to help leaders step into their leadership with confidence. There are so many people out there that have ideas of what they can do to help others, but they stand on the sidelines and they've got a taste of what success looks like. And they know that they're capable, but sometimes they need some help. And talking it out in coaching sessions with me can help them realize what are the action steps necessary for them to step into a position, help themselves, but also help others.
How do you think you helping them is going to look different in 2026?
In 2026, with the kind of leaders that I coach, usually in Silicon Valley, they can use LLMs to find out other people's perspectives. They can use LLMs to refine what they want to say, but they need to develop relationships. They need to connect the dots, not only between ideas, but between people. And that
Mhm.
takes relationship building. And while there might be a tendency of thinking, oh, there is this AI coach that can help them build relationships. It's through something that we're doing right now, which is having a conversation
Right.
and being present that is necessary to move people forward.
So, conversation. We're talking about both conversations and AI. How do these things fit together?
This is something actually I've thought a lot about over the last few years. It's when you introduced me to ChatGPT, I was a little skeptical because I had typed in a prompt, give me a 2 hour lesson plan all about persuasion, because I was about to teach a 2 hour workshop at Netflix all
Hmm.
about persuasion. And it came up with the stupidest lesson plan. I was like, ooh, I didn't know anything about prompt engineering at the time. I guess I just thought that the AI would be able to pick all of the context necessary to know what engineers at Netflix wanted to know about persuasion. And I was like, whatever. And I tossed it to the side. But then I think it was 6 months later, you said, no, Michael, you need to pay attention to this. And I dived in and I started having conversations with LLMs. And it was very easy because I treated it like a friendship. I treated it like a person. I was like, well, this is what I would ask another person. And as a communication coach, I'm used to having conversations. I would test it, I would try it, I would tell it where it was doing right, where it was doing wrong, and see if I could break it. And I think I developed a good sense of what capabilities LLMs have because my ability to have conversations with people just transferred easily over to having conversations with LLMs.
Right. That what you said reminded me of the one big term that I remember from 2025, which is AI slop. I
Yes,
think I don't know, was slop the word of 2025? No,
it was.
it was 6-7.
It
But AI slop, I mean, I think everyone now knows what AI slop is, right? It comes in video and in text form. If you go on LinkedIn or any social media for that matter, it's just filled with it, right? And you and I were probably guilty of that too in
oh,
the
definitely.
beginning. It was just so tempting to be like, oh my God, it can handle all my social media. And then you look and you're like, yeah, no, that's not how it works.
I've learned that to learn something new, you have to just test it out, try it out. And I sent out a few blog posts that were pretty much all created by AI to see if I could get away with it. Now I look
Did
back,
you?
yeah, I did. And the scary thing is that some people said, wow, I could really hear your authentic voice through that writing. And I was like, okay, maybe the LLM actually knows enough about me. I mean, Sam Altman said, just upload a couple of documents that represent your writing, and the LLM will pick up on the patterns and trends and then recreate your voice. I read it and I was like, that doesn't sound like me, but
Hmm.
I really wanted to test out, could people see the difference between real writing and AI writing? And sometimes they can't, sometimes they can, and that's
Hmm.
the slop. The other words that I think people picked up on this year is uh, it's cooked.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. I heard this one from younger people and like AI,
younger people.
it's cooked. The world is cooked.
The
Like
world is
we're
cooked.
we're all living in a world where one of our friends, Alex, he said that at work it seems like you can generate a whole email, really long, polished email from 3 bullet points, send that email to your boss, and then the boss copies and pastes that long
Hmm.
email and then gets 3 bullet points. And now everybody knows that length does not mean effort. Like back in the day, when, as a former university writing lecturer, I was guilty of saying, please write 3 pages, because when you had to write 3 pages, that meant that you had to think through a thought process with 750 words. But now length does not mean effort because you can go to ChatGPT, you can type in a prompt and you can get a really long essay, copy and paste it.
Right.
And now what we think of as indicators of effective communication, of genuine thought process, they're no longer true. The other thing that I saw is there's so much AI slop on YouTube and
Yes.
older generations not being able to recognize. I have trouble recognizing if it's AI or not. And there are so many trolls out there creating horrible content preying on people's misperceptions of reality or fantasies that they have or simple realities that they it's clickbait to be able to generate revenue. And as
I've
a
I've fallen
person,
for it.
you've fallen.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I love YouTube. I watch YouTube a lot. I use it like TV. And every now and then something will pop up in my feed. I'm like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And like 5 minutes in, I'm like, something is off about this video. Feels strange. And then I realized it was clickbait and just completely AI generated. But the content was good enough so that it caught my attention for 5 minutes and it kept me engaged. But after a while, I started realizing what was going on. But it's difficult, even for someone who works with AI on a daily basis, it gets so much better, uh, you know, all the time. It's really difficult to say what's real and what's not.
I do love the cat videos on Instagram where they're doing martial arts and the little kitty is at the board and the sensei or the dojo master is like, you can do it, and the cat goes meow and it breaks the board. 2025 AI slop.
AI
2025 prompt engineering.
was
AI.
the hottest thing in the beginning of the year, and by the end of the year, everyone said, "Stop doing that. If you're still doing prompt engineering in 2026, you're doing it wrong."
Prompt engineering is dead. Why is it dead?
I believe because in 2025, the main way people interacted with AI was through chat. Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, right? Everyone now knows there's this like magical chat interface that you can type anything into and it will solve all of your problems. But the big promise about prompt engineering was you have to ask the right questions, right? You have to know what to ask and what to say. Like you said earlier, I thought I could just have it create a workshop framework for me or whatever with just a few words, but it doesn't work like that, right? You really have to think about how do you engineer your prompts? How do you manage context? What information do you give it? And what do you ask from it in order to actually get the result that you want? And that became this craft, which is now called prompt engineering.
Hmm.
But now, what I'm seeing across the industry is that these techniques and these prompts are being built into applications. And, people now understand what prompts work well, how to manage context. And so engineers pick this up and build this into applications so that users don't have to think about that anymore, right? They just use the application. If you want to think about, creating workshop materials or something, right? There's now an app that is made for coaches to create workshop materials. All these prompt engineering techniques already built in so that the user doesn't have to think about it. They can now just give it this high level task of, hey, give me a framework for my workshop next week. And the application will know, okay, you are Michael, you are a leadership coach, and you have all of these things and frameworks that you're working with. And here are the people that you're serving, right? It knows everything about you and has all the context and knows how to put it all together in a way that is useful to you. And so that is what we're now seeing across the industry is that these specialized applications are coming out that use this in the background.
So you can go to ChatGPT and you can have the prompts and you can do it for free, or you have a $20 subscription. But then there are these applications coming up that do all of that prompt engineering for you, and then they charge a
Right.
price.
Right.
So why
And
why are people going to pay a price for this application rather than just do it for free?
um, well, one, it's a lot more effort to do it for free. And two, you actually really have to know what you're doing.
Okay, the
Does that
quality.
make sense?
I have to actually know what. Well, as a person, I mean, I'm almost 50.
Hmm.
I know how to do it using my noggin, and I can see how AI can make it faster, but like I know how to create a framework. So, ChatGPT can make it a little bit easier to iterate more quickly. I don't need it done for me.
Maybe creating a framework wasn't the best example.
Okay.
Maybe analyzing your coaching session transcript is a good example,
Hmm. Tell me more about that.
right? Um, well, first of all, you have a lot of transcripts because you do a number of coaching sessions every week, so they pile up.
Hmm.
And if you think about analyzing them with ChatGPT, first of all, you have to record the transcript, export it, put it into ChatGPT. If you do that for all of your sessions, it's just so much work. And then you have to have a system on how to systematically analyze them in order to actually get the insights that you want. So you're creating this whole new pillar of work inside of your, like next to your work that you're already doing, just in order to get the intelligence out of it. So technically, yes, you can do it with a $20 subscription for ChatGPT and use it as your magical tool that solves everything for you. But the amount of work that you have to put in and the amount of learning that you have to do in order to actually get the results that you want, it's just not feasible. So if
It,
someone comes and says, I am recording all of your sessions, I'm getting all of your transcripts, and I'm giving you the interface that has all the prompt engineering techniques built in, and you get something that gives you exactly the result that you want as a coach without having to think about how to do it.
the metaphor that's coming to mind is the difference between a hammer and a nail gun. Like, which one are you going to buy? Especially if you're building a house. I mean, if you have some small project, you can buy a hammer for $5. But if you're building a house, you want to have a nail gun.
Yeah, I love that metaphor. I don't know why that is the metaphor, but that makes a lot of sense. Yes. Yeah,
I'm a
for
big
sure.
fan
I mean,
of.
ChatGPT is the hammer, and you can
I'm a
build a house with a hammer.
I'm a big fan of Peter, Paul, and Mary. If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning. Uh, okay, it makes sense. So this application that, let's go back. 2025, everything was about prompt engineering. Now, prompt engineering is dead.
2026 2026 it looks to be all about agentic workflows, agents, AI agents. I think everyone has heard of AI agents, but no one really knows what they are.
I don't really know what they
And
are.
if we want to connect this to, what we said earlier about these workflows and your context and managing all of that, agents are essentially just a concept that encapsulates all of that in a really intuitive way for the user, right? So you have a workflow and the knowledge and the context, and agents are just a way to create very specialized, smart workflows that are taken out from the real world and kind of put into code, right? If you think about something like analyzing a transcript, right? What would you do in order to really get some useful insights? Well, first of all, you have to get the transcript, you have to somehow analyze it, and then find some information that you think is interesting, and then reason about that information. That is a workflow. And you have specific expectations of what you want out of it on the other end, right? But it's not very clear what exactly needs to happen. It's not like you say, okay, if this, then that, then now you have insight. It's not really how it works. You have to kind of like look at what was said and then reason about it and then ask some questions and get some answers. And so that is now with large language models what we can do from a coding perspective, where we don't need to specifically say anymore, okay, you are going to get these 10 pieces of information, and then you're going to do these things with that information, but rather you give an agent more agency, and you give it a higher
Mhm.
level task, and you tweak it a little bit, and then you have this thing that you built that can now handle a very specific task. And so that kind of is what agents are on a very high level without getting too technical. It's just an encapsulation of a real world workflow that an agent can now handle for you.
As a teacher, multi-step processes are really quite difficult for students usually to wrap their head around.
Yeah.
They have limited temporal awareness,
Love that.
and
Spoken like an AI native.
they are thinking in moments, but they're not seeing how all of these moments line up. I mean, they love the final product, but to have the discipline to finish one task, then complete another, and then complete the next and see the through line or the red thread, and then if necessary go back to step one if they need to revise the whole process, the information within that process. People give up. They're just like, oh, this is too difficult.
Hmm.
So it sounds like agents or agentic AI is stepping out a process and going through each task, and that's difficult for most humans. They don't like that.
Yes. And you can fine tune these agents in exactly the way that you want, right? Because now we have all of these tools coming out, OpenAI, Anthropic, the ChatGPT. It's all built into these applications now where you can build these little agents really easily, and they get access to your browser, right? That is another thing that we're now seeing, is that now finally you can connect them to everything that you're already working with. You get connectors to your spreadsheets, to your Google Docs, to
Mhm.
whatever you want. So now all the pieces are being put into place where people understand large language models and AI a little better. And now you don't have to copy paste stuff into it anymore. You just say, hey, please connect to my Google account so it can read your emails. And now you can all of a sudden create an agent that just, let's just say, every morning goes through your unread emails, filters out the stuff that you don't want anyways, and you can actually tell it what you want and what you don't want, right? So it's super personalized. And you can say, all right, now tag these in a way that makes sense for me. And then you wake up in the morning and your inbox just looks beautifully tagged and all the stuff that you don't want is already thrown out.
So you
Or
can focus on what you want to focus on.
exactly. And how to build these agentic workflows now is the challenge because you don't want it to be technical, right? That is what I do in the background with code. But now how do we get this into the hands of people and make it usable and safe? Because you can imagine that these things, if you put them on autopilot, they'll easily wreak havoc. If you give them, let's say, the ability to respond to your emails, yeah, you can imagine a million nightmare scenarios. So we also have to educate people on how to use this stuff safely and what to not do, because you check one wrong check mark and you're fucked. You get into legal trouble or you get super high bills or something can go easily wrong really quickly.
If I understand you correctly, LLMs, for them to work optimally, they have to have large amounts of context.
They have to have the right context,
The
not
right.
just large amount, right?
Well, I mean, it seems like you could just dump it a whole bunch of information and then it would be
Yes.
able to figure it out. Or what do you mean? Right information, large amount of
Well,
information.
first of all, the amount of information that you can give it is limited. That is what we call the context window, right? So there's an upper limit to how much text you can dump in there. So you do naturally have to think about what information do I put in,
But
right?
that
I can go
that's a
ahead.
problem for right now because NVIDIA is just building tons of computers that can house tons of context so that the context window is larger.
Yes, the context windows are getting bigger. Really depends on what kind of model you have, what kind of technology you're using, but it's also a question of cost, right? So if you handle large amounts of data, it costs a lot of money. Sure, the
Hmm.
prices are going to go down, but the other problem is also, like humans, if you give the language model too much information, it doesn't really know what to do with it, and it gets confused and it gets slow. So you have to be very specific about, here is the type of information that I'm giving you, and here is what I want you to do with that information.
The reason why I'm saying this is because one, it sounds like ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini are kind of like Walmart. It's like a big store that has lots of things, but it's way too difficult to get in there. You're lost there for hours. And in the future, you want to be able to go to a smaller store that is more specialized. You can walk in, get what you want, and
Radio
walk
Shack.
right out. Radio Shack, yes. Oh, whatever happened to Radio Shack?
Yeah.
Uh, and then the second is, well, the reason why I'm asking is because somebody that I was talking to recently said, Michael, I'm not going to record all of my conversations. I want to just live and be present. But what you're saying is we're going to record all of our conversations on our watches and our phones so that we can have large amounts of context. And then the LLM is going to know our whole lives through the conversations, email, calendar, and then be able to have agentic AI figure out stuff and respond to emails. But with the context window, that's not the future because that's what I thought the future was going to be.
Exactly, right? So if you think about, you've recorded 100 conversations, all an hour long, you cannot put all of that information into one context window and ask the LLM, please organize my life.
Really? But that's the future, right?
Um, well, under the hood, it might eventually look like that.
Hmm.
But if you just think about the language model as like one small instance, right, where you say, "Here's information, please do something with it." That's not how it's going to work. What you can do now is with platforms like Otter AI or something. they will record all of your sessions or all of your conversations, but they give you a way to actually manage that data in a way that makes sense, right? Because you never ask a question that is about all of your conversations. You ask a question about something that happened in a couple conversations or
Mhm.
people that showed up in conversations and how you interacted with those people. But that means the data needs to be managed in a way that breaks it down. So in order to do that, you have to take all of the conversations and then start by extracting, okay, who are the people that we actually talked about? What were the topics? And then kind of break it down. And then you can say, all right, maybe show me all the conversations where we talked about artificial intelligence. That already filters it down. And then you're going to take that information and ask questions about that using a large language model. So you don't just give it the raw information and ask a question. You have to do some pre processing and some filtering, just like a human would do.
Sometimes I go up. Let me start that again.
Mm-hmm.
As a communication coach, I love talking to people. And sometimes at like a party, I will just ask a really big question to a stranger and see what
I've been
happens.
there.
And it's really interesting to hear what they say because they have no context of who I
Right.
am. And then for me to listen and pick up on something, and usually it's kind of insightful information, but that doesn't sound like what you're saying. You're saying with LLMs, you give it 100 transcripts, 1 hour transcripts, and you ask it a question. It's not going to give you insightful information. But I'm going to tell you something. I have uploaded to ChatGPT with the permission of everybody a conversation with a friend, a conversation with my partner, and a coaching conversation, and asked it, tell me about Michael. And it's actually giving me some really insightful information. It doesn't know much about me, and I just want to know how the AI perceives me based on limited information, which is the same thing as talking to a random stranger at a house party. You ask it a question and you kind of get a sense of who you are based on how they respond because they're just looking at your clothes, they're looking at your face, your facial expressions, and they're trying to connect with you. I find that to be kind of interesting,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not the future of LLMs. Like asking LLMs big questions based off limited context.
Sure, it can be. Right. But in this scenario, you explicitly wanted to say, hey, you don't know anything about me. Tell me what you think about me based on these conversations. If that is what you want to do, great. But in another scenario, you might want ChatGPT to know everything about you and put it into context.
Hmm.
But how do you do that, right? Do you, in the same conversation, all of a sudden also dump all of your previous conversations and everything you ever said? No. ChatGPT in the background has done all of that for you and has created, a model of you um, that you can, see in your settings. You can see what all of the things that it knows about you. But there has been some work done previously in order to store more context about you.
To connect the dots, prompt engineering, I think, is dead because when you don't give ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude enough context, it gives you just slop. And the future of AI is agentic AI with the right amount of context that can connect the dots between your personal life, your work life, and the processes that you want completed. And it goes through those tasks to be able to provide you something that you find useful.
Yes, we have now crossed this chasm where we can start to actually trust AI in more real world scenarios because it is now able to actually connect the dots and you can ask high level questions and get useful answers, which before was really difficult to do.
When social media became a thing in 2008, I loved it. I wanted to upload lots of personal information because I wanted it to help me keep track of all of my friends in San Francisco, and I could make sure that I was growing my network. I let it know who my mom and dad were, who my brothers and sisters were, who were my trusted friends. And with those posts, of course, everybody was kind of reluctant to share personal information, but became more and more comfortable with uploading pictures of ourselves and making confessions for everybody to read. And look at how that turned out.
Yeah, I think people have a better understanding now about how valuable their personal information actually is to the companies who own that data,
Mm-hmm.
but also how it can be misused. I think we've seen that in, especially in the US elections, how personal information was aggregated by big corporations in order to manipulate people and have a hand in the elections. And that's
I
scary.
I hope agentic AI helps people understand causal relationships and seeing, like, if you want to have this output, agentic AI is going to do multiple tasks and create this output that is really valuable to you. I would love for that to educate everybody in multi-step processes, and they become more disciplined and they become more focused and there's full of integrity. But a fear of mine is that, yeah, there's a sucker born every minute. And some people are just going to throw their information into AI going, wow, you can know so much about me, and not thinking through all of those steps and seeing how some really large corporations are going to learn a lot of information about a lot of people, and they're going to become a lot more wealthier because of it. And that's why we need to hold them accountable and also build companies that say, I'm going to create a company that really trusts, that really helps people trust that they're not going to do anything with that information, so we can use the full potential of AI technology.
Yeah, and I think the landscape is changing in that sense, where now really everyone can be a creator, right? With these new platforms like Lovable, you can have an idea and turn it into a, an app that works and serves a very specific purpose within minutes.
Yeah.
And the good thing is that you own your data, right? If you create the app, just for yourself. You don't even have to share it with anyone. You can now create an app that just solves a very, very specific problem that you have in your work and just automate this workflow without having any coding knowledge. Um, and that's amazing, right? So that is a new paradigm that we're seeing where you can actually own your data, you can own the code, you know the entire stack and everything that happens in between, or so is the promise, right? I mean, there's still pitfalls, but I love this democratization of AI, where you don't necessarily have to go to a big corporation, but you can say, hey, I'm going to build this myself and just like automate this little workflow on my own. I don't have to buy a product for that.
Using the Walmart analogy, these big corporations that are building AI, you are really supporting Walmart, but can we go back to the small mom and pop shops and support them, support the community, and still have all of the benefits of the new technology? That's the future I want to build. That's the future I want to build. I mean, maybe I'm starting to sound like a boomer, like in the good old days, back in the days, small businesses, but now I can see why this is so important, that me personally support leaders who are building that future, but also providing this technology to people in a way that makes the future tenable, because the future where all of our personal information is uploaded and then it is monetized. I don't know if I want to live in that future.
I mean, you already live in that future. that, that future is here, my friend.
Oh, oh, how we already live in that future? How? Tell me more.
I mean, just by being on the internet and using a browser, you are creating so much information about your preferences, the pages that you visit, where you're logged in, where you're not logged in. I mean, everything is always tracked
Hmm.
and used and recorded and repurposed and analyzed. There's, this saying, if it's for free, then it's very likely that you are the product, right? All of social media, you're not paying any money for it. Why is that? Because you are the product. Just by using the platform, you provide so much information that they can sell and make money off of.
But I trusted those leaders to make good choices, and I was 28 years old and I didn't know what I was doing, and I uploaded a whole bunch of information to social media.
And do they have an incentive to actually educate you about that? No, they don't.
My relationship with companies and technology, it is it's in development. Maybe I can have an impact on the future.
Well, you can by making conscious choices about where you put your money, right? Which products do you use? Who is building these products? What is their mission? And are you supporting them with your money or not? Are you supporting those companies that have, a sustainable mission and provide the future that you envision? Or do you just, dump money into big tech corporations who offer these free products but profit off of your data?
I have a few gray whiskers, so I think I know what to do moving forward. But as I said, the sucker is born every minute. Like there are so many people who are not aware of this and they're just going to throw information onto
Yes.
an LLM in hope of getting some information that's useful, but they don't understand what's happening when they keep on doing it over and over and over again and what the future looks like when everybody's doing that.
That is why thought leadership is so important. Leading by example.
At the party that I was for New Year's Eve, somebody said, "Oh my gosh, my phone is listening because my wife said this and then it showed up on my Facebook." And our
What?
friend, dear friend Alex was like, "Well, that's actually just because you share the same internet and social media is looking at what is going on one browser and then suggesting ads on a phone that's connected to the same Wi-Fi." And it made sense, but I was like, "Oh, that's how that works." I mean, I knew that the phone wasn't actually listening, but I never really thought about, oh, it's just the same. What is it? FTP? What what is
IP address? What?
IP
Hmm.
address? And I was like, oh yeah, mystery solved. I will be saying that moving forward. Anytime says anybody says, "Oh, my phone is listening to me," I can just go, "Actually, you're just using the same IP, and that's how it's learning. It's not actually listening to you."
I mean, that is a great example that shows how much tech companies can infer about you, your life, and your preferences without actually listening to what you say. Just by knowing how you use your devices and which services you use and visit. That is enough information to have a very, very detailed picture about who you are.
Yeah. And it's mostly subconscious. I remember in the 80s, everybody was talking about how commercials are subconsciously
Yes.
impacting you. And everybody was like, well, that's just the way it goes. Like, if you want free TV, you have to watch these commercials. And I can still memorize, I can still recite, I can still sing a lot of the jingles from the 1980s.
Oh,
Let me see
yeah.
if I can get one. Oh, well, that's that is
The Kool Aid
Kool-Aid,
Man.
the Kool-Aid Man.
Well, so that was just implicit information, right?
Mhm.
Implicitly looking at your behavior on the internet. Now, if you have these chat agents that you use on a daily basis, ChatGPT, Gemini, and all of these products, it's a lot more explicit. You give it so much explicit information about what you want and what you're looking for, and you're really opening up a lot more than what used to happen with just this passive stream of information. And that feels very different and very scary.
I remember first using social media and there were no ads.
The good old days.
You could just get updates on what everybody was doing. And of course, that led to people going, well, didn't you see my social media
I
post?
poked you.
And you'd be like, oh my God, I'm not on this thing 24/7. But I remember ads being introduced, and it was like one ad, then it was two, then it was three. And now you go to social media, and I think it's three influencer posts, one ad, and then you have to keep on scrolling, and then maybe you see one post from your friend. I think the same thing is going to happen to chatbots. It's
Hmm.
going to happen, and it might be implicit at first. It might make recommendations on what to buy, and you're like, oh well, I can forgive it for that. It makes sense. Shareholders, they gotta, make a little bit of profit. I can handle this for getting this free service. But then slowly the white noise creeps in. Is that gonna happen? What do you think?
Great question. I think everyone wants to know that now. Obviously, the big players are going to say, no, never, never, right? But you don't know that. Um, I think if you are concerned about privacy or what happens to your data, one interesting thing or one interesting trend to look out for in 2026, I think, is local models. What does that mean? Right
Yes.
now, when I want to use a large language model, I have to go to one of the big corporations who host these things in their data centers, and then they run the code on their infrastructure because it takes a lot of compute power. But there is a trend that goes in the exact opposite direction, where you can actually have a small model that doesn't take that much compute power and run it on your local laptop. If your
Mm.
laptop is powerful enough, then all of your data and all the processing actually just stays on your own machine and stays private. And so that is something where a lot of work is done in order to get these models smaller and more efficient so that people can actually just run them on their own devices and have everything in house, if you will, without having to trust any external entities.
How can I make sure that that future happens? Like, what can I do today?
Um, I think what can you do today? First of all, you can educate yourself and see what's out there and just follow these work streams because most of them are really open source, and you can try them out and see if they work as an alternative to the products that you're already using. Right, so they work very similar to all the agents or like all the chat apps that are out there, right? You just have an input field and you ask it questions, you give it information, and it gives you a response. The response might not be as good as you get from ChatGPT, but it might help you in most situations. And if you have data that is very, very sensitive,
Hmm.
client information or whatever, that is actually a very safe way to use artificial intelligence with sensitive data, is to run the model locally on your machine.
Do you have an example of a product?
I don't actually. I haven't looked into that much, but I know it's out there, and a lot of people are working on that. And there's a lot of work done in the open source community. And yeah, it's definitely something to look out for if privacy is a big concern of yours.
2026. I think 2026 leadership is really going to be tested Should I do what is right for the company, or should I do what's right for the user? Should I do what is right for me? These tensions, it's such a hard equation to problem solve because, like, is there a right answer? I mean,
Mhm.
the reality of the situation is we live in a capitalistic world. If you try to be the do-gooder and like, oh, I'm going to fight for the future, and you make choices that are best for the user, you might not be able to sell your product, to be able to grow it, to be able to really get it out in front of other people. So you have to, at one point, play with a little bit of the dark side to be able to get the product in front of other people. I'm all for that future. No judgment in the choices that we have to make. It is making those choices intentionally so that you don't become the billionaire that has lost complete touch with the reality, that they live in a completely different reality that I can't even make sense of. I don't even think one conversation with one of these billionaires I could find a way to connect with them because they live in such a construct that is beyond me. How leaders can move intentionally through these dilemmas? Do you think AI is going to be able to help them?
Absolutely. I mean, now even more so, if you want to know something, you can learn about it on your own. I mean, that was already the case with the internet, but now with AI, it's just gotten so much easier, right? You can just open ChatGPT and ask it to teach you about anything. So educating yourself now is just not optional anymore, especially with things moving so fast. If you encounter something that pops up in your feed all the time and you're like, I don't know what this is about, and it scares you, educate yourself.
One thing that I've learned in coaching is a lot of leaders, it's not only about learning information in the outside world, the world outside of them, it's also learning about the internal world. How do you think AI can help people learn about themselves?
Like you said in the beginning, you started thinking about AI more as a companion, someone to talk to and have a conversation with. And I think that mindset is something that is worth adopting. Is that you can now just have a conversation with a virtual helper or whatever you want to call it, and actually just learn something about yourself. Just like I would talk to you in order to kind of like reflect on something that happened in my life, I can use AI to do that. And for some people, that might actually feel a lot more safe because they can be vulnerable and open up without being afraid of judgment.
This is what I found is AI is a great reflection tool. You can provide it a lot of your raw thought processes without any type of judgment, and you can see what sense it makes of it. And by reading it, you're like, oh, is that what I'm trying to say? Is that what I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to think through? But in 2026, with our awareness of privacy, uploading my personal thoughts to ChatGPT, knowing that it's going to have a meta pattern to be able to understand human consciousness, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if I trust the company to have all of that information from so many different people about what consciousness is.
Yes.
I'm wondering if I can trust it.
Um, yes, and you should be wondering. And I think that should spark some curiosity to branch out and look for other companies that try to solve that problem that you just mentioned, right? This privacy tension is something that became super obvious in 2025. And there's now companies who are really trying to address that and really say, hey, your data is safe with us. Here's a vulnerable space where you can actually work with your data and be vulnerable and trust that you have full control over what happens and where your data goes.
As a coach, I have learned that people don't usually open up. Well, no, that's not true. People, what I find about coaching and AI together that's super interesting is a coach knows how to ask powerful questions that allow a client to really open up and feel safe and secure to share an idea or a thought or a feeling, an assumption, a concept that underlines all of their behaviors, and to really examine it and see, do they want to keep this idea moving forward, or do they want to put in a new idea that allows them to unlock a new level in their leadership or enjoyment in life. And AI on top of that builds this sense of accountability that then an LLM is recording it, seeing it, and then it can take that information and then provide moments to remind you, hey, are you sure you want to do that? Because you said in the coaching session you didn't want to keep on using that belief or thought or assumption, and now you're in this moment and you have this choice. Is this going to, let me say that again, um, with coaching and AI, now there is this awareness of what you're saying, and it's being recorded in this trusted, safe platform. And it can remind you in key moments throughout the week, hey, do you want to keep on holding on to that belief, or do you want to maybe this is hard. What am I saying, Marco?
I think what you're saying is that accountability is now possible. Holding yourself accountable is now possible with AI.
Yeah.
But it's scary because it reflects back to you the commitments that you've made in the past. And reading that can feel very uncomfortable for a lot of people. And that is what growth is. It is
uh,
uncomfortable.
you see the smile on my face because I'm
Hmm.
so uncomfortable with that. It's like,
Hmm.
oh, I don't know if I want something to hold me accountable. I just want to
Uh-huh.
say this thing that upsets me, annoys me, and then just vent and then move forward rather than actually do something about it.
Exactly. And it's tough and it's uncomfortable in the beginning because there's this like artificial entity that tells you, hey, look, this is who you set out to become. Are you still on that path? Are you
Hmm.
still committed to it? Are you still doing the thing you wanted to do? And it feels strange. When I experience it, I had to really reframe how I feel about that interaction. But now it feels really good because it's not AI telling me who to be. It's just reminding me of what I said in the past.
Like a good friend, like a good coach, but friends and coaches, they only see you moment to moment. It's not like a partner who's there 24/7. Uh,
Exactly.
and you can perform for friends, you can perform for a coach and like say, this is who I am. And then you're like, cool, awesome. And then behind the scenes in everyday life, they're not actually working on their stuff. And AI is a trusted partner that can remind you, hey, are you making these choices intentionally, or are you just sliding right back into old habits? And what I love about this is I'm all for self awareness. I'm
Yes.
all for expanding my consciousness. And while I have done that in my life so far by talking with friends, with family, networking, building a business, I'm always looking for new ways to expand my consciousness. And I think AI can really be additive, but when done right.
I agree. At the very basic level, what you can get out of it is a heightened sense of self awareness. Simply reflecting back what was said in the past after 7 sessions, if you ask the AI, hey, tell me about this goal that I was working on, and it goes back and says, hey, in session one you said that, and then in session three you made that commitment, and then in session five you actually turned around. You're like, oh my god, yes, that did happen. But who would ever be able to do that? You as a coach, you're not going to go through all the 7 sessions
Well,
and analyze the transcripts, right? It's so much work. So we can now hand off this work to AI um, as a companion to you as the coach.
I have an amazing memory. I can remember what people say in session one, session three, and session seven. And it is the work of a coach to say, hey, client, I just want to bring this to your attention. And it's really uncomfortable. I do it because I know it's what is in the best interest. And this is why my clients suggest and recommend me to their friends, to their colleagues, because I can hold them accountable. And at the same time, some clients, they go, oh, no, 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 da, 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
And now with AI, I can go, okay, maybe I'm wrong, but we should check the transcripts.
Yeah, I think I wasn't trying to undermine, your ability as a coach, right? But this brings out an amazing tension that I experience every day building this product
Mm.
is that I have to convince people to take an honest look at themselves and say, I don't remember everything, and that's okay. Both
Yeah.
coaches and clients, as someone who's receiving the coaching, it's really easy for me to say I don't remember anything that I said in the past sessions. For the coaches, it's a lot more difficult because it's their job to
Mm.
help the clients, and reflect and hold all of that, and kind of guide the journey. But coaches are also just people. They have limited attention span, limited time, limited uh, we're naturally limited, and the more clients you take on, and the more difficult it becomes to hold that space for everyone. And so that's where AI now really can be super powerful in order to just like supercharge you to actually pay so much more detailed attention to every single client.
Yes. This is what I've found over the last year with transcribing all of my coaching sessions is that I can scale my coaching business. I now trust myself that I can take on 15, 20 clients because there is this accountability buddy that is following along with the coaching sessions. And at times, of course, I doubt myself. I'm like, did this person say that in session one,
Hmm.
session three? Oh, should I do it? What about if I'm wrong? It would question my credibility if I called
Yes.
somebody out on something. And then they're like, I never said that. I'm like, oh, crap, that was another client. But now I have an ability to really trust myself and have that security net along with each coaching session. My clients love it.
Yeah, and I think it's just an amazing thing to do as a coach to say, I'm growing as well. I want to be vulnerable as well and look at my blind spots, because if I don't try to actually identify and look at my blind spots, how am I ever going to grow? How can I teach this transformation to my clients without actually embodying the same philosophy?
Years of being a teacher trainer and seeing new teachers believe that how they're teaching is the way that they're going to teach for their entire lives. And you're
Right.
like, well, no, this is the first step in teaching. Yes, you provided a lot of insight to the students, but also there is an ability to ask questions so that those insights are generated from the students rather than you giving it to them. It took a while for them to understand that you are going to grow as a teacher, and as you grow as a teacher your teaching skills are going to grow. It's the same thing with coaching. As a coach, I find that when I am figuring out something personally in my personal life, guess what, all of my clients come up with the same idea. And I'm like, did I just create a scenario for my clients that helps me better understand myself? And I don't know what that is, but it is a true thing with those coaches who are really bringing their full self into each coaching session. You end up figuring out stuff through your clients. Of course, it's always in service to your clients and you're always helping them grow. But yeah, your personal stuff comes up. And to know that AI can help expand my consciousness and my coaching skills and identify blind spots, things that maybe I don't want to look at, maybe things that I have a sneaky suspicion of, but I'll figure it out in 2027. Those things come up. And when I take accountability to learn from it, I find that then it's easier to hold my clients accountable for owning their stuff. And that symbiotic relationship is what helps them step into their leadership roles.
Learning does not happen in isolation, but it goes both ways.
I think this is a truth that most people don't talk about. They like to think of coaches providing hidden information, something that everybody else knows that they haven't realized yet. But in the age of AI, all of that information is already out there. You can chat with an LLM and do a whole bunch of research and get that information, but processing it and embodying it
Hmm.
requires a human conversation to make sense of it because it's not so much the information, it's your relationship to that information that's important.
Amen.